Good morning, children. Today we are going to learn about the chapter Hydrosphere. Hydrosphere is your 11th chapter. So today we are going to learn about this chapter. As the table of content of this chapter are meaning of hydrosphere. You should know the meaning of hydrosphere, tides, formation and pattern, ocean currents, their circulation pattern and effects. So today in this class we learn what is hydrosphere, then different main sources of water on the earth, and then the tides, the formation and pattern, and about ocean currents we will learn in the next class. Okay children, so let us know what is hydrosphere. Hydrosphere is nothing but it is a combined mass of water found on earth's surface. It is nothing but it is a combined mass of water found on the earth's surface, such as oceans, rivers, streams, lakes, etc. Children, as you know, the earth appears blue when viewed from the outer space. And this is only because approximately 71% of the earth is covered in water. Okay, children? So, the 71% of the earth's water it refers to the hydrosphere. Hydrosphere refers to combined mass of water found on the earth, such as in oceans, rivers, streams, lakes, as I have already discussed before. So, children, the movement of water around the earth, over and through the earth, is called water cycle. Okay, the movement of water around and through the earth is called as water cycle. So there are some important main sources of water on earth. Let us discuss one by one each. So the first main important source of water is ocean water. Second one is the water on land, then underground water and the water in atmosphere. Ocean water, 97% of the earth's water supply is in the oceans. Okay, children? And the oceans which is unfit for ocean water which is unfit for consumption. The remaining 3% and 2.3% is locked in the polar ice caps, and the balance 7% is available as fresh water and groundwater. Remaining part is the groundwater, and the rest one is available as fresh water in rivers, lakes and streams. Thus we see that we have a very limited stock of usable water. 3% of surface water like from rivers, streams and ponds, and 66% of groundwater. So children, major part of the water on the earth's surface, that is 97% of the water is from the ocean water, and which is unfit for the human consumption. And which percent of the water is fit for consumption? That is only 0.3% of the water, which is in the form of rivers, streams and ponds which are fit for consumption. And then the water on land. Water on land is a result of precipitation or the seepage from underground, which forms streams and flowing on land and finally join the sea or rivers. Okay, children, finally join the sea actually. The rivers also join the sea sometimes. So, the water on the land is the result of precipitation or seepage from underground, which forms streams and which are flowing on the land and finally join the sea. Then the next one is the underground water. Underground water, which is in the form of, this is also in the form of precipitation and from rain or snow on the surface of the earth. Some of the water evaporates and rest sinks into the soil. Some of the water just evaporates and the remaining water sinks into the soil, which can be which remains in the soil or the subsoil for in the underground, which remains in the soil or the subsoil. Most of the water ultimately reaches the ground, and underground water stream, that is water and transmits water readily, is known as aquifer, and which can be in the form of wells, tube wells or bow wells, etc., which is stored in the underground water. And the next one is water in atmosphere. This is in the form of humidity, and It forms vapors in the air which gives rise to humidity. Water evaporates from the oceans and other water bodies due to the surface water. Water vapor condenses clouds or fog and finally precipitate, causing rain or snowfall. Okay, children. So these are the different sources of water on the earth. First one is the ocean water. Next one is the water on the land, and the other one is the underground water, and the next one is the water in atmosphere. So ocean water, which is the maximum of it and which cannot be used as for the consumption. Only for the consumption we use the surface water, that is only 0.3%, which is in the form of rivers and streams and ponds. And the next one is the water on land, which is of seepage, and which some of the water seeps and the other rest part of the water flows on the land and finally join the sea. Then the other one is the underground water, which sinks in the subsoil and which is in the form of an aquifer also, and it can be in the form of the wells, tube wells and bore wells also. Then the water in the atmosphere, which is in the form of humidity, and finally it precipitates in the form of rain or snowfall. Okay, children. Then moving forward, let us now learn about the movement of ocean water. The ocean water circulates or moves in three different ways. So the first one is waves, second one is tides, and third one is currents. Now let us learn about each and every movement in detail. First we should know about waves, tides, and then we learn about tides and then currents. About the currents we will discuss in the next class. Today we will learn about what is a wave and the tides and the different types of tides. So the first one, let us know what is a wave. Have you seen, children, any time the waves? When you visit the seashore or any time, you might have observed also. Yes. It is nothing but the oscillatory movement in the water manifested by the rise and fall of sea surface. You can have a look of the picture also in your textbook. Also there is a picture you can have a look at. When you copy the notes, you can draw the diagram also, just for your practice, that's all. The oscillatory movement in water manifested by alternate rise and fall of sea surface is known as waves. Okay, children. These moving ridge-like curves on the surface of the sea are mainly produced by the winds. Major cause for the produce of this is because of the winds on the surface of the earth. Okay, it's very simple. Waves are nothing but they are the oscillatory movement in water manifested by alternate rise and fall of sea surface. Okay, children. Hope it is simple, clear for you all. Then let us know about the tides. Have you heard this word, children, anytime? Tides? Hope so. Yeah. Tides are nothing but they are also the rise and fall of sea water. Why it is caused? Yes, it is caused due to the gravitational forces of the sun and the moon. This is only because tides are occurring only because of the gravitational forces of the sun and the moon. Yes, which are nothing but tides. There are two different types of tides, children. They are the high tides, which can also be known as the spring tides, and the low tides, which can also be known as the neap tides. Okay. So what are tides now? Tides are nothing but the rise and fall of seawater due to the gravitational forces of the sun and the moon, which are known as tides. Okay. Children, the sea waves produced by the tides are known as the tidal waves. The sea waves which are produced by the tides are called as tidal waves. This tidal currents affects the whole water mass from the surface of the sea to the bottom. Okay. Then the sea waves are produced by the tides, which are produced by the tides are known as tidal waves. Children, the sea water and its movement toward the coast is called as tide, and the resultant high water level is known as the high tide water. The fall of the seawater and its movement towards the sea is called as the ebb, and the resultant low water level is called as the low tide water. So there is a difference between the high water and the low tide water, which is known as the tide range. What is the tide range, children? The difference, it is the difference between the high tide water and the low tide water. Children, there are some factors which cause tides. So there are some factors which cause the tides. First one is the gravitational forces of the sun and the moon, and the rotation of the earth revolves around the sun following an elliptical order, and similarly the moon also rotates from west to east and revolves around the earth along an elliptical orbit. And we will learn about this, about the Peggy and Opegi, in the end of this class. Okay, children, the surface of the earth facing the moon experiences maximum gravitational force of the moon, while it will be the minimum at the opposite side of the earth. Okay, the surface of the earth facing the moon experiences maximum gravitational force of the moon, while it will be minimum at the opposite side of the earth. These high tides is also formed at the opposite side of the earth simultaneously because of the centrifugal force of the gravitational force of the moon causing outward bulge of the water. Okay, oh, fine. Then these high tides, when the sun, the earth and the moon are in the same line at the time of full moon and the new moon, their gravitation forces work together and high tides are formed. So as in the picture you can see, they are the sun, the earth and the moon are in the same line. The sun, the earth and the moon are in the same line. They are also known as the spring tides. Very high tide is caused when the sun, the moon and the earth are almost in the same line. Such high tides are also called as spring tides. Okay, children, these gravitational forces of the sun and the moon work together with combined force, and thus a high tide is caused. The height of such spring tide is 20% more than that of the normal tides. The height of this spring tides is 20% more than that of the normal tide. Such tides take place twice every month during the full moon and the new moon. You know, children, what is the full moon and the new moon? Full moon and new moon. Full moon is, and we call it as a Purnima, and the new moon we call it as Amavasya, as you know. Okay, then the next one is the neap tides or the low tides. Neap tides or the low tides. The sun, the earth and the moon come in the position of quadrature, that means it forms as a right angle. You can see in the picture also, it is formed as a right angle. These tides producing forces of the sun and the moon, they work in the opposite direction, with the result a low tide occurs. Such a tide which is lower is called as a neap tide, and the height than that of the normal tide. The range of this tide is lower than the height than the other normal tides. This height of the neap tides is generally 20% lower than that of the normal tides. Okay, children, these tidal range is not constant, but they keeps on changing depending on the locations of the moon and the sun. They keep on changing depending on the locations of the moon and the sun. And when does this, what is the periodicity of these tides? Children, on an average, every place experiences tides twice a day. So the periodicity of the tides is, on an average, every place experiences tides twice a day. Children, since the earth completes its rotation in roughly 24 hours, every place should experience tide after 12 hours, but this never happens. Each day tide is delayed by 26 minutes because the moon also rotates on its axis west to east while revolving around the earth. Since the earth rotates from west to east, the tide center shifts westward. When the tide center completes on the round, the moon's position is ahead by the tide center by that time. Okay, so mostly the average, every place experiences tides twice a day. Okay, children, on an average, the tide every place experiences tides twice a day, right? Then a particular tide center takes place 24 hours 52 minutes to come under the moon, but by that time there is another tide at the opposite side of the referred tide center, and this happens 12 hours 26 minutes. Okay, children. So, as I have explained to you about what is a high tide and what is a low tide. What is a high tide? Yes, children, high tide is also known as spring tides. When the level of the sea water rises and water moves further up the shore is known as high tide. High tides occur on full moon day, Purnima, and on the new moon day, that is known as Amavasya. High tides occur when the pull of the sun and the moon act in the same line, that is horizontally when they act. And simply to understand, high tide occur when the pull of the sun and the moon act in the same line, that is horizontal. Okay, children. And the low tides, which are also known as the neap tides, the fall of the seawater and its movement towards the sea is called as low tide. And low tides occur when the position of the moon and the sun with respect to the earth at right angle to each other. They are right angle to each other, which is vertical. Okay, children. And this high tides are horizontal and the low tides are vertical. You can see, have a look at the picture also. Even when you take down the notes, when you write about the high tides and low tides, draw the diagram accordingly. Immediately after you take down the notes, you draw the diagram also. The notes will be sent to you, children, after explaining to you about the ocean currents. So let us know about the perigee and the apogee. What are these? What is this perigee and apogee? Perigee is nothing but the period of the nearest distance between the moon and the earth. Yes, the period of the nearest distance between the moon and the earth. And apogee, the period of the farthest distance between the moon and the earth. The farthest distance of the between the moon and the earth is called as apogee. Children, this is nothing but the farthest distance between the moon and the earth is apogee, and the period of the nearest distance is called perigee. The difference, the period between the nearest difference between the moon and the earth is called perigee, apogee. Okay, the nearest distance between the moon and the earth is perigee, and the farthest distance is apogee. Right, children? So let me quickly revise to you today what we have learned. First, initially, I have explained to you what is an hydrosphere. It is nothing but it is a combined mass of water found on the earth's surface, and the different sources of water on the earth are ocean water, water on land, underground water, water in atmosphere. And then the movement of ocean water takes place in the form of waves, tides and currents. What are waves? Waves are nothing but they are the oscillatory movement manifested by alternate rise and fall of sea surface. And these waves are mainly produced by winds on the surface of oceans. These waves are mainly produced by the winds on the surface of oceans. Then comes the tides. Tides are nothing but the rise and fall of seawater due to gravitational forces of the sun, the moon are called as tides. And there are two types of tides, high tides which are also called as spring tides, and the low tides which are also known as the neap tides. So what are high tides, children? When the level of the seawater rises and water moves further up the shore is called as high tides, and these high tides occur on full moon and on the new moon day. And the high tides occur when the pull of the sun and the moon act in the same line, which is horizontal. And these low tides are the fall of the seawater and its movement towards the sea is called as low tide. And these low tides occur when the position of the moon and the sun with respect to the earth at right angle to each other, which are vertical. Okay. Then what is this perigee and apogee? When the period of the farthest distance between the moon and the earth is called as apogee, and the perigee, the period of the nearest distance between the moon and the earth is called as perigee. Children, so today we have, as in the table of contents, as I have already told to you, we have learnt about the meaning of hydrosphere, the waves, the tides formation and pattern. And we are left with the ocean currents, which we need to discuss in the next session of this class. Then there is ocean currents, their circulation pattern and effects will be dealt in detail separately. So along in this ocean currents, we have to learn about the different types of ocean currents and the causes of the ocean currents. Then we will learn about the circulation pattern of ocean currents and the effects of the ocean currents. So this needs much more explanation to be done. So in the next class, and another video will be sent to you to about the ocean currents, their circulation pattern and effects. Meanwhile, you go through the textbook, read the content of the textbook also, try to understand, and then when in the next week when the another video will be sent, after that the notes will be sent to you, then you can note it down. Okay children.